Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this presentation, Interest Session 2B, Cultivating Critical Readers with Amplify's Middle School Solution and How to Use Stimulus Funding to Ensure Access. A few housekeeping items to take note. For closed captioning, please look in the Q&A box below for the link. The link will open in a separate window in your computer. Note you can select translations in that window as well for Spanish, French, Haitian Creole, traditional Chinese, Portuguese, Hindi, Russian, and Arabic. Some other things, all of the sessions today will be recorded and will be available for replay right here as soon as the session ends. We will be monitoring Q&A throughout the presentation, and if time permits, at the end of the session, we will answer some of those live. Welcome, 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 everyone. Let's dive in with our time together, and I will start by just introducing myself. My name is Camilla Simpson. I'm an experienced middle school reading and ELA teacher. I've spent many years as an instructional coach supporting teachers with best practices, as well as an Amplify content writer and product specialist. I am joined and so excited by my esteemed colleague, Molly.
Hi there. Hi, everybody. Thanks for that lovely intro. My name is Molly Catalano. I live in Baltimore. I've taught middle and elementary school before coming on to Amplify and talking and loving all about Amplify close reading, what you'll be hearing about today. And so
let's dive in.
Yep, go ahead. Yep.
I was going to say, let's dive in with our agenda. We both know and recognize how important it is for middle schoolers to be engaged in reading, but I'm sure the question is why? Why close reading?
And so what you're going to see, we want to hear from you. We are so excited to be here and chat with you guys about close reading today, but we want to hear from you. So in the chat, you'll see a link to a poll, and we want to know from you, why is close reading so important? So go ahead and take a second and answer that question for us.
And I do see the responses are coming in.
Oh, we have a good variety too. I like it. It's always interesting to hear what you guys think is important, because we could talk till we're blue in the face about why we think it's important, but it's also nice to see what you guys perceive as important.
All right, well, give it about another 30 seconds. Go ahead and select your choice. I know we did not make it easy to just pick one. Okay, so here are the results. So about 62% of you said it cultivates critical readers. Absolutely. So we're talking about cultivating critical readers. Did our title today give you a clue? All right. What about the other 23% of you said provides a scaffold approach for students? So we're definitely going to get into those things as well. And I know you're thinking, why a supplemental program that focuses on close reading?
So what we want you to do is take a second and really this quote from the Partnership for Assessment of Readiness for College and Careers. This is such a powerful quote. We know that we want our students to feel prepared for their next steps in life, whether it is college or it is a career. And if really honing in on close reading being the key component to be that prepared, then why don't we immerse our students right within there? So why should we cultivate critical close readers? What is the big piece? Why should our students really focus? We know that close reading is truly that number one skill that they need to master in language arts class. It's truly the basis of all the skills while they're digging deep, whether it's informational or literary text, and it's a skill that's truly not going to be going anywhere anytime soon. It's also cross-curricular. Now, Camilla, where have you seen, besides language arts class, where have you seen close reading been used?
Oh my goodness. Think about the circulatory system in science or causes of the Civil War in social studies. This is one of the things that I think we've always wanted to see our students do and make that transference. And so that cross-curricular that's able to happen has been powerful.
Absolutely, especially in this odd setting that we've been in this last year. I imagine that even in PE class, we're asking our students to look at heart rate and whatnot. So it's an important skill that's going to be used across all those content areas. And looking at college and career readiness, I know we just checked out that really powerful quote, but research really does suggest that students need that exposure to complex text in order to be prepared for college and careers and the future. And we want to make sure that we're really fostering those critical thinkers. And close reading really allows our students to look under the hood, if you will. And so they're not only questioning everything that they read, but really putting in perspective, what is the author trying to convey right here? What is their message? Why are they using these patterns? Why is the text organized in this fashion? And the goal really is that transfer of knowledge. So once they're able to really hone in on those skills, they'll be able to apply it from one text to another. And you're probably thinking about the end of the school year since it is the middle of May. I don't know how we got here already, but let's really start the conversation back to school. So what is essential for us as educators to really think about for the next school year with our students?
One thing I want to start to kind of talk about is starting points. Starting points is a way for students to re-engage their whole self with school. We recognize and we know that many students have been isolated, and they may continue to be isolated as we go into the next school year, into the summer. So as teachers, we definitely want to help to get to know our students. We want to know them as writers, thinkers, as individuals. And so Starting Points really offers a set of research-backed skills, activities designed to boost students' emotional well-being and academic engagement. And I'm sure you are wondering, tell me more about these starting points. I want to see them. So we will be placing that link into the chat for you to get access to starting points. Remember, this is built on research behind stereotype threats and culturally sustaining pedagogy. So this is something that all of us, we want to use with our students. Another amazing thing about starting points is that it can be implemented in person, remotely, synchronously, or asynchronously. So definitely let's start our year getting to know our kiddos. Some other things, and this is going to seem a bit extreme, so I'm going to prepare you. Throw out your reading logs. This is, yes, I am a reading teacher. I'm still a reading and language arts teacher. Throw out your reading logs. We spend countless pieces of paper and time, and we just hope that students are entering the correct number. They're reading independently and on a regular basis. That's still important. But let's provide our students with a reason to read. Let's give them some things that are intentional. Let's allow them an opportunity to not just say, okay, I think it was 20 minutes, but we can actually see how my students are doing. What's the duration? How long did my students read? And gain some knowledge about what's happening with our kiddos. So reading logs, we can go ahead and put those to the side. I hope I have some teachers in the background cheering this on. And this is also coming from a mom with those reading logs. So if we're taking away the reading logs, what are the recommendations? Well, the first thing is science of reading. We know our students need science of reading. And we also know that within the aspect of instruction, we're talking about some critical components. We're moving away from deficit-based instruction into the whole child. So students ideally may not be engaged with the text. We hear this all the time. And so how do we cultivate that? Let's give them an ability to focus on key characters, on events, settings in the book that will have them re-engage. Because you're all here, we're dealing with middle schoolers. We know that they're different, and we know we have to keep that engagement. Also allow them opportunities to have moments for discussion, compare and contrast aspects. We want to keep these skills. And we also want to personalize the learning for our students. So let's work with something that's adaptive. The biggest thing that we all need right now is some time savers for us as the teacher. Time savers, we know we don't want it to be a time saver, but then that quality isn't there as well. So let's look at some aspects of Amplify Close Reading that shows that.
Absolutely. So I could agree more that middle schoolers, they are their own unique bunch of students. They are they're very motivated by not only the outside world, but they want to gain that within. That really complements what you had just said. So at the end of every single chapter within Amplify Close Reading, they're going to get this great snapshot. Think of it as a report card of how they progressed within that specific skill. But what you'll also notice is those followers. And right in the middle of the screen, it'll say you've added 16,000 followers within this chapter. And so they're not real followers, but you know that this is so engaging for your students. They are so motivated by their phones, by what's happening on Instagram. So this is another way for them to really want to be immersed in that storyline and to follow. So what happens is for every time they get a question right on the first attempt, they get 100 followers. And the second attempt, they're going to get 50 followers. Now, not only is this going to progress them within that storyline, but once they have these followers, they're going to be able to unlock different customizations for their personal avatar. So just like you'll see on the screen, this is their avatar. They are going to be within that story. They're going to be able to see themselves come to life. So why not make it their own? Change their name. We want that hair color to match what we have. We want that great jacket. And this is extremely motivating for students. If they see one of their peers with the green jacket, they know they're going to want to work through that storyline in order for them to also get that green jacket. So just another way that we make it completely personalized for those students. So now that you've seen some of these features, what are other features within Amplify Close Reading that you can expect? And so I can't reinforce this enough that Amplify Close Reading truly is a perfect supplemental digital literacy program for middle schoolers at this moment. And so within Amplify Close Reading, your students are going to be immersed in this age-appropriate student experience. It's not babyish, it's dramatic, it's exciting, and they thrive on that drama. Everything is completely student-driven. So your students are working independently. It is meant for them to solely go through this on their own, through that instruction and through that specific tailored practice. It's a light lift for teachers, and I know that there are teachers here who are just clapping like, give me the light lift, we deserve it. And so it truly is. So your students are going through this on their own, and you're just checking the data, which we'll look at in just a little bit. So yet again, a light lift for you all. And all the while, your students will all be on the same page, because even your approaching readers and your EL students, they'll be able to receive that differentiated feedback, even getting extra support scaffolding so that they're also in that storyline. And all the while,
I will say that is like, I just want to pause there because that's super exciting. We know we want to support all of our learners, and the fact that you're saying that's there, the support is there, they're still able to receive the storyline. I just had to kind of pause there because that's awesome.
Oh, I am so glad you paused. I think it's awesome too. We'll take a peek at those specific extra supports in just a few, but we wanted to make sure that all of your students have that opportunity to really dig into that story and really hone in on their close reading skills. And all the while that your students are within the storyline and working through those chapters, you as the teacher, you're getting this meaningful data on your teacher dashboard, really great insights for both you and administrators to see everything your students have been doing. And all the while, I can't say this enough, 45 to 60 minutes is all that we're really asking for that proven reading growth. And I know this seems like such a doable amount of time, and it truly is, to cover all of the key features that close reading really does ask for.
And so I think that I know I'm going back to that reading log. You're talking about 45 to 60 minutes when the reading logs that I'm noticing, it's like they have to read for 100 minutes. And we always wonder, what are they reading? Is it something on grade level? Is it something that's actually engaging for our students? Or are they reading the cereal box? So this is just exciting to know, 45 to 60 minutes.
Right, and they're in front of screens all day anyway, whether you're in a remote asynchronous setting or they're on their phones or they're just sitting on YouTube. We know that they are very screen driven right now. So I feel like the less amount of time we can get them in with that proven results is absolutely essential. But looking at those key features of close reading, you're going to be seeing this all within Amplify Close Reading. You'll see those short passages, and those are important because when the students are really digging deep within that text, it needs to be something that they can really digest in just one sitting. You don't want it to be too lengthy. So anywhere from a paragraph to maybe 2 pages, really depending on the age of your student, but it really can be taken from a larger excerpt. Like if you're really into novels, you can take a passage from that novel and use that. Your students are going to be seeing high quality and complex text. We want to make sure that your students aren't struggling, but they have that productive struggle. We don't want the text to be too easy. They get the gist of it and they're bored with it. We want it to be complex. We want the rigor to be there so that way when they go back for that second read, they're really digging deep that next time. And those repeated readings are essential. We know that the first time you read, you're getting the main gist, but what happens each and every other time that you're looking at that text? You're digging deeper, you're noticing things you didn't really notice those first times. And it's important to have those text-dependent questions paired so that way your students really have that purpose for going back and digging through. And Camilla knows that annotation is probably something I could jump on my soapbox about. When I used to tell my students, all right, go back into the text and find where the author used this specific figurative language, and you give them the highlighters and the whole page is yellow. But so annotation is a critical, right? Didn't that happen to you as well?
Absolutely.
And their page is soggy, right? It's just flimsy and wet. So annotation is truly that critical piece of close reading. We want them to be able to go through the text, but to be able to find that unfamiliar vocabulary. What patterns are the author really suggesting? Numbering those paragraphs, simple things like that, but underlining, circling, writing in those margins. And all of these key features are found within Amplify Close Reading, and they fit within both informational and literary texts.
And I think even the annotations for many of my students, they thought it was like time to color. They're like, this is so great. I love coloring all of the words. And I'm so glad that you brought up short passages, because also students they don't feel as if, wow, I have to do an entire novel and close read this whole thing. No, let's take it a passage at a time.
Absolutely, a more digestible chunk for them to have in one sitting. And so looking at our program structure, what you'll see on the screen is that we're really alternating those chapter topics between the close analysis of informational texts and literary texts. And why did we do this? It was extremely intentional. So research has really shown that mastery and long-term retention of these skills are really leveraged when these topics are interwoven and not just all in book 1, we're talking informational, all in book 2, we're talking literary. That way they're able to spiral off of each other. What do they have in common? So I want for you to think of Amplify Close Reading as incredibly detailed instruction right inside of a super fun wrapper. But now that we've seen how the program is structured, what specific skills are we covering? And looking here, our Amplify Close Reading is broken into 3 separate books. And so what you'll notice between those books is, yes, we're doing informational text as well as literary text. But when our team was developing Amplify Close Reading, they really looked at what research and what skills do students need when they're coming out of middle school to be successful in high school. And so what was tripping them up the most on these standardized tests were really understanding and deciphering informational texts and digging deep within those literary texts. And no other program at the time really allowed for students to independently work in tandem with both of these types of texts. So now we have Amplify Close Reading, and it'll really help those teachers who you can't teach everything, right? You can't teach all those skills necessary. So this is the perfect niche right here. But looking at those skills progression, looking at these different books within the trilogy, how are our students experiencing these chapters? And this would be one of my favorite parts. And we all know that scaffolded gradual release model is tried and true, it works. And it's not just working with your EL or approaching readers, it really works for all of your students. And that's exactly how each and every one of the chapters within Amplify Closed Reading works. And so we'll start with this great comic intro. That way the students are getting a sense of what's happening within that chapter, what are they about to be engaging with. Then we're starting with that I do phase. And so they'll get interactive instruction from a last rebel who you'll meet in just a second. And they're going to be getting tailored feedback, looking specifically at those skills. Then they'll move on to the we do. And this is where they're going to apply those skills organically in an interactive e-reader. I love this because your students are going to see a variety of genres. They'll see poetry, they'll see literary greats, they'll see speeches from presidents, even excerpts from Harry Potter. So it's really engaging for your students to interactively annotate and work through that close reading. Then we'll move on to the you do phase, where it's the creative application. And so what students will do is they'll take everything that they've learned and they're going to apply it into whether it is a multimedia, whether it's a choose your adventure, a real culminating piece to end that chapter. And then we'll see how that applies in that comic outro and how that's going to wrap up that chapter right there. And all of this is all happening within the dome. And so Amplified Close Reading takes the form of an interactive graphic novel set in a dark dystopian future, completely run by machines. These machines have completely taken over the human's ability to think for themselves and able to read. So when your students log in, they're recruited as one of the rebellion, and that's exactly who's teaching them, one of those last readers. And they're enlisted to really save the world and save reading. So this is extremely engaging. Imagine your students knowing that they're going to save the world, and all of that learning is truly math. So think of gaming with a purpose. And so not only will your all of your students be immersed within this storyline, but all of those students who are approaching readers, who need those extra supports, even your English language learners, they'll all be supported within Amplify Close Reading. So there are a few excerpts on the screen, just little blurbs about what kind of supports that you'll see within the program, but they're fantastic. I love the reveal words. That way, all of our students are on that same page. So often students go through a text, and if they're not sure of a word, that whole sentence is just gone. So this is a great way for us to really hone in on those specific parts. But all the while, you as the teacher, with a simple click, you can change the path that the students see. So they're able to receive those extra supports, like that recorded audio, like those scaffolds, and even sentence frames. But Camilla, I know that when you were teaching, you loved your students. You were very gung-ho for your students. But who was always the most important person in your classroom? Let's be honest.
Right?
Love it's you. It's
me. Of course. Yes. Of course. Even now, I think that's so important for us. We want to give all to our students, but if we aren't being supportive, if we aren't getting the supports to support our students, we know that it goes downhill very quickly. One of the things I think as ELA teachers and reading teachers, we spend a lot of time, we want to figure out how to get as much text exposure to our students as possible. We are always finding different tips and tricks and inserting a new text here. We want to give them the multiple exposure points that we can. And sometimes in doing that, we end up getting to that burnout. And that burnout happens before we even get to any type of holiday breaks. And we still have about 6 more months to go with our kiddos. So I'm really happy that you talked about that.
Yes, and we want to make sure that you guys are also important, and we view you as you are hierarchy in your classroom. And so we want to make this easy for you. So there's lots of benefits within Amplify Close Reading specifically for teachers. Right here, you'll see the data that you would be receiving on your dashboard. So you'll see specifically how each and every student is working within informational text, within literary text. How long were they in each chapter for? You'll be able to go in and see specifically if there was a typed response. What did they score? That way you could use that as a formative assessment if you wanted to. But yet again, simplistic, easy lift for teachers. It is meant for the students to be completely driving this program.
And it's interesting, Molly, that all of this that you're mentioning, it's happening in the background. My students don't see this. They'll see their end of chapter and that information. But I am a data junkie and I want to know every step of the way, what they're doing, who needs support, how long they're spending. And so this is a dashboard definitely meant for me.
Absolutely. And what's fantastic about this is I know when you were in the classroom, you would see your students, you might be doing a whole group lesson on, let's say, characterization. And unless you were having your cruising clipboard and going around, you wouldn't know specifically how each student was doing within that skill. But right here, you would be able to see which students weren't as successful with characterization. And that's an organic small group that you could pull to really hone in on those skills. So yet again, just really easy for you because you guys deserve it. But how would this look in your classroom? So as we see here, this is one of the last rebels. This might be one of the characters who is instructing your students. We love them. But Amplify Close Reading is super flexible. So 45 to 60 minutes a week. That can definitely be broken into multiple times a week, a small chunk every day. If you have independent work time, it'd be a fantastic time for them to jump on and work. Also great for this asynchronous new lifestyle that we're living. So our students could work directly from home and we would still get that data right on our dashboard. It's great to reinforce those key concepts, but even as a spiral review, because at the end of every book, your students are going to have a large chunk of a review. So that way it builds them for that next book. So let's chat about how we can get this into your classroom. I know that you're all asking right now as we're chatting. So can you use funding for Amplify Close Reading?
So let's talk funding for a bit.
Let's talk funding.
I know. So there are new federal investments that represent some historic levels of support that's committed to helping K-12 schools recover. This is truly a rare opportunity that for many of us that have been in education, this is really going to drive the transformation and provide every child with an opportunity to thrive. This is unprecedented. We have never seen this before. Here are a few fast 5 facts, if you will, of the American Rescue Plan, or ARP. If you have not heard of this, go ahead and just hold on because it is really amazing. First thing is large amount of money coming to schools and districts. ESSER 3, we're talking about $122 billion. A lot of
with
zeros.
a B.
Yeah, a lot of zeros. And these funds are going to go on top of ESSER 1 and 2. That was about $67 billion. Some other things to note is that schools and districts have a lot of leeway on how to use the money. And we are, if you've been in Title I schools, other districts, you know, sometimes you'll get the funds, you're super excited, but there are some really tight restrictions on what you can use that funding for. At least 20%, a huge chunk of this, must be used to address unfinished learning. We have been heard, educators. We know that there's some unfinished learning and we need to support our students. The money's available soon. I love when that happens. And the money can be used through September of 2024.
Oh.
That means that I have time and we want to see the trends. We want to see that development happen for all of our students from our 6th graders all the way to their 8th grade. And now we can do that and don't feel as if we're running out at any time soon. Also, the funding, it's already applied. It is already applied to CARES funding. Something I love to share is that all of our Amplify programs align to the key stimulus priorities. And when I say all, I mean it. So
wait, Camilla, you mean that all of that funding, they can use it for Amplify products? Is that what you just
yes,
said?
I know. You can use all of it. If you were looking for specific areas of allowable expenses, here are just a few. There are about 16, and we were not going to bombard you with all of them on one screen, but here are just a few moments. So think about activities that address the unique needs of at-risk students. These are things that we've always wanted to do, or there's sometimes pots over here for some students and over here and not over there for others. That's not the case anymore. So I wanted to share those with you. And then I wanted to also get into implementation. I'm sure you're thinking, how is all of this going to work? Love the fact that students are getting access to multiple texts. Love that it's 30 to 45 minutes a week. Love that this can happen asynchronously. But let's talk about how to implement a supplemental and still keep that cohesion with the core instruction that we're using. So,
absolutely.
Oh, I was going to say, which core program benefits? All of them.
All of them. Isn't that fantastic? You feel just so nice saying that all of them.
All of them. So regardless of the core program that you are currently using with your students, Amplify Close Reading supports all of those core programs. And if you're looking for a core program, of course, I have to let you know that Amplify ELA is right there and aligned. The crosswalk is already built to teach middle school ELA the way you've always wanted to. So Molly, kind of remind us about the flexibility and why Amplify Close Reading works with all core programs.
I would love to. So not only is Amplify Close Reading completely supplemental, so it, just like we chatted about, will mesh with whatever you're doing as your program, but it's extremely flexible that you can use it in your classroom. So yes, we have our 3-book trilogy. And ideally, you're starting in book 1, going through book 2, going through book 3. However, let's say, for example, you're about to teach all about characterization in your ELA class, and your core program is, that's the skill, that's what you're working on. But you know that characterization isn't really chatted about until book 2 of The Last Readers. So how could this work? What you're able to do is you're able to unlock all of the books for your students if you'd want to. Obviously, we'd like them to flow through the storyline so it's a coherent story for them. However, if you want them to go through that characterization chapter first before you decide it's time to bring this into my class as a whole group, it really gives them a little bit of background, and it could really be that extra support for those students where characterization might not be their strong suit. So you do have that ability as well. But not only can Amplify Close Reading be used with any single core program, but can also be used in a variety of ways. So there's so many ways that we can use this. We've been working with lots of schools nationwide this year who have been using Amplify Close Reading. And I know that this year has been wonky, to say the least, and everyone is in a different mode, whether you're in person, you're completely at home, you're doing a little bit of both. This works perfectly in any of those scenarios. I could be live with my children in my classroom, and a handful of them are on their devices working through Amplify Close Reading during independent time, 10, 15 minutes a day. I could also use this as my RTI support. So if I'm pulling students out, this would be a great way for them to catch up on some of those missed skills. We've also seen a lot of schools choose this for even their summer enrichment programs. We know a lot of instruction has been lost this year, even parts of last year. So it's a fantastic way to really bridge that gap in any program you might be having this summer. Like we had just talked about, introducing some of those key concepts, but even test prep. We know standardized testing does not care about COVID. It's still going to happen. So this is a fantastic way to prepare our students, because we know that all of these standardized tests all of the text, it's on grade level. So we really want to prepare our students for those as well. But as you can tell, Camilla and I are extremely excited about Amplify Close Reading. So let's take a second to recap all that we've chatted about and look at some of the questions that we have in the chat, because for some reason, this chunk of time has just flown by.
It has absolutely flown by. And I even think about the after school and summer school programs. And sometimes parents are concerned, like, what exactly are my students getting out of this time? Is it just going to be a sit and get? But students are really interacting with engaging text. And it is something that parents can kind of rest assured that we're being very purposeful with what students are doing during that time. That's what they expect of us, for sure.
And it's not just gaming. They might see their student on Amplify Close Reading and think that they're gaming, but like I said, it's gaming with a purpose. They're questioning everything they're reading. They're focusing on claims, evidence, reasoning, which they'll also see in science class. They'll be able to really hone in on their close reading skills. But like Camilla said, that's going to be in all content areas. Completely student driven. So your students can do this without you necessarily being there, saving you time that you can use to work with other students in other small groups.
So I'm excited. Let's see, what are some questions?
I know.
All right. So there are some questions that I did see in the chat. One is a great question, which is, will the skin color also match? And yes, the skin color can be customized. Those color modifications, they're all available at the onset. It's not something that students have to get followers for. They're able to customize so that their last reader looks like them.
Mm-hmm. They want to see themselves within the game. We want it to be equitable for everybody, and we want them to feel that it's personable. Right now, I'm in a pink mode with my avatar. So from head to toe, hair, jacket, skin, I am pink all day.
Which I absolutely love. I think it's adorable. Other questions. Another question, which rightfully so, this is a great question to ask. Is this a tier 1 program? We've talked about the flexibility. And so there are many ways that teachers use this program. Some use it in the classroom with students a few times a week. Others are using it in that small group instruction. We kind of show the various purposes and ways that teachers are using this. It really is designed to help students with a wide range of abilities and to really deepen their ability to understand complex text, because we know middle school for many of our students is the last moment to really recalibrate their trajectory. So we want to provide that. Thank you. In the chat, you'll also see there's more information about Amplify Close Reading. So please click on that link and you will see even more moments. Any other questions? Time has really flown by.
So Camilla, I have to piggyback on what you said. Going from elementary to middle school, we prepare our students to become more independent, to try to make sure that they're handling that rigor. But at the same time, we're not necessarily teaching them those test taking strategies. You might have on the board, Test Friday, study. Well, what does study even look like? So we need to really reinforce how our students are reading any single piece of text, how they're deciphering it, how is that point of view of the author, how is that even going to transfer to my point of view? Maybe I completely disagree with the author, but I think that's really rich organic learning when your students can make those connections right there.
Absolutely. This has been an amazing, amazing moment in time. Thank you all so much for your questions. Definitely please join us in the final wrap-up session with Susan Lampert. Just go to the schedule button. It's in the top left corner and drop down to the session. We will see you there. Thank you, everyone.